Hi there, and welcome to another life-giving sermon podcast from Resurgent Church. At Resurgent, we endeavor to bring a word that is both encouraging and relevant to your everyday life. So sit back, enjoy the sermon, and for any more information, check out our website at www.resurgentchurch.ca.
We are in Testify, as Carlos said. Who's been loving this series? Oh, our hope for you walking away from this series, leading into our Easter month, which is the biggest time of our year for us to have guests in our house. We would hope that you would walk away knowing that your story is powerful, knowing that it has influence, knowing that your story can actually change lives. And you may not know that yet in the room today, but I want to tell you that every single one of you, your story is powerful. Your story is so powerful. And so I'm going to jump right in because I have so much that I want to share with you today. I told the 9:30 a.m. I'm wearing leopard print and I've got sneakers on, so I really mean business today. Okay, I've got a great word that I feel like God wants to share with you. And so I'm going to start off by sharing with you a story that happened when I was in kindergarten, and I'll tell you why God highlighted this story to me. But when I was in kindergarten, like 5, 6 years old, right, I had the biggest crush on this little boy. Like, he was so cute. Like, he had tan skin and curly hair, and we used to sit in the reading corner together and read our books, and he was just so cute. I had the biggest crush on him, and Valentine's Day was coming around, so I was like, okay, this is my chance. This is my chance. This is my chance to show him that I'm so into him. I'm 6 years old. I'm so into him. And so I'm like, hey. So I go through my photo album, and I pick a photo that I really like. It's me, a little girl on a horse. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to give him this photo of me with a little card, and he's going to keep it forever. He's going to fall in love with me from the moment he has. He's going to put it in his little desk, and it's just going to be amazing. It's all going to work out great. So I'm at my desk. I remember it's so I'm at my desk. I'm writing this love letter. I think I even did lipstick and kisses on the actual envelope. Little hearts, you know, got my creative on. And I brought it to school with me, and I give it to this boy. His name was Caleb. And I give it to Caleb, and I'm like, here you go. And he's just like, thanks. And I didn't really think anything of it. I was like, it's okay. He's going to take it. He's going to love it. The day went on as normal. We still went in the reading corner together and read our book, my favorite part of the day. And so I'm all excited. I'm pumped up. I'm leaving class, and I look in the trash can, and there's my photo crumpled up. Like, not just like thrown, like crumpled up and thrown in the trash can, okay? And that was my first ever heartbreak in my entire life. I experienced heartbreak at the age of 5 or 6 years old, and I just couldn't believe it. I was like, what is that doing there? And I just didn't know what to do, but something in me told me, it's okay, Lauren. Picked up the photo really quick so no one saw me. Picked up the photo, and I put it back in my backpack, and I brought it home, and I straightened it out, and I put it right back into the photo album. Okay, now I was like, God, why are you highlighting this story to me? And I really felt like he said, it's time for some of us to take out some of that mess from the trash and put it back in the photo album, okay? This is our choice. This is what we have a choice around. We can either leave our mess a mess. We can choose all the circumstances that happen in our life, the things that cause us pain, the things that we're unsure about, maybe that broken relationship you had, maybe that failure in a job interview, maybe a loved one passing away. We can take all of those circumstances that hurt us so much, and we can leave it in the trash. Or we can pull it out of the trash, and we can let God do what he does best, and we can take that trash, and we can let him turn it into a message. I took that photo, and I put it back in the photo album, because one day I was like, somebody is going to value this. This story is going to help somebody someday. And right from that moment, I was like, okay, I got this. And even though I was heartbroken, I knew it. But that's what I want to talk to us about today, is every single one of us in this room has a little bit of mess. Would you agree that sometimes life can get a little bit messy? Okay? And so our choice is this, that we can take that mess and we can leave it there. To be honest, if you leave stuff in the trash for too long, it starts to stink. Okay? It starts to stink. Or we can choose to take it out and let God use it. Because that's what he does. He takes all of our trash, he turns it into a message, he makes it something incredible, he makes it something beautiful, and that's our story. All of those little moments where we took it out of the trash and we let him use it. That's our story. And so we're just going to have a conversation today about what it can look like for God to take our story and turn it around for good. Okay, so my first point is this: mess to masterpiece, past, present, and future. You know what a masterpiece is? It's something that stands the test of time, and it's viewed as a masterpiece from generation to generation. It doesn't lose its shininess. It stays a masterpiece. Now, God can take all of our mess, and he can turn it into a masterpiece, but he needs all the pieces. Have you ever tried to do a puzzle, and there's just that one puzzle piece that's missing? He needs all of the pieces. And a masterpiece isn't a masterpiece with all the parts. So what God does is he redeems your past, he redeems your present, and he redeems your future. He doesn't just choose one of them, he redeems the whole thing. And so what this tells us about God is that he's in it for the long haul. He's in it for the long haul. He's in it for the whole thing, right? He doesn't just choose one aspect of us to make whole, but he says, I will make all of you whole. And then on top of that, what he promises us is that I will not just make your story whole, but I will take everything about your story and I will let it redeem your generations in the future. Your story will not just be for you, but it will be for your kids, and it will be for your kids' kids, and it will be for their kids after that. It is generational. Your story has power today, but just you wait 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 years down the line with the impact that your story is going to have. And along this journey, while God's making you whole and he's doing incredible things in your life, he's going to begin to make you promises. He's going to begin to put dreams in your life. Things are starting to come awaken in you. And what I believe that God says to us is that although all of these promises, some of you are sitting in the room today and you're like, that promise hasn't come through for me yet. That promise hasn't come true for me yet. I want to tell you this, that even if the promises that you're believing God for do not become fulfilled in your lifetime, they will become fulfilled in your lifeline. They absolutely will. Your kids will reap from what you're sowing into today. Okay, now another cool thing about a masterpiece. I was doing a little bit of research. The term masterpiece originated in the Middle Ages when apprentice artisans had to prove their skills by submitting exemplary work for approval by the guild that governed their trade. Carving, metalwork, enameling. Danielle should be in there. If the piece demonstrated mastery of crafts, the apprentice would be promoted to master and authorized to train others. Your masterpiece is given to you. Your whole story is given to you so that then you can use it to train others. It is your tool. I want to read to you from 2 Corinthians. If only you look at us, you might well miss the brightness. We carry this precious message around in the unadorned clay pots of our ordinary lives. That's to prevent anyone from confusing God's incomparable power within us. As it is, there's not much chance of that. You know for yourselves that we're not much to look at. I love that. We've been surrounded and battered by troubles, but we're not demoralized. We're not sure what to do, but we know that God knows what to do. We've been spiritually terrorized, but God hasn't left our side. We've been thrown down, but we haven't been broken. What they did to Jesus, they do to us. Trial and torture, mockery and murder. What Jesus did among them, he does in us. He lives. It's your ordinary life that actually carries the power. It is your ordinary life that actually carries the ability to transform lives. And some of you might be sitting in the room going, well, I'm not perfect enough, or my story's not perfect enough for God to actually do something. If God is real, I don't know, but I don't think that my story, I don't think he would want my mess. I don't think he would want my broken pieces to be able to turn it into a masterpiece. And I want to show you something. In the Bible, all of the people that God uses, all of the stories that are now being taught in our Sunday school, in our kids program, and preached from this platform every single Sunday, the ones that we're using to tell over and over again, these are the people that God used in order to inspire hope. Are you listening? Noah got drunk. Abraham was way too old. Jacob was a liar. Joseph was abused and abandoned. Gideon was afraid. Moses had a speech impediment. Rahab was a prostitute. David had an affair, then murdered somebody to cover it up. Jonah ran from God. John the Baptist ate bugs, which is just really weird. Martha worried way too much. Matthew was a cheat. Paul persecuted the church. Peter denied even knowing Jesus. And Lazarus was dead. These are the people that God uses. So don't you dare say that your story is not powerful and it doesn't have the power to transform lives, because it does. And some of you might be sitting in this room going, how do I even start? How do I even begin telling my story? This is what Jesus says. He says, the greatest commandment is this. Out of all 613 laws in the Old Testament, this is the greatest one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. And the second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. See, Jesus is not complicated. And so this is it. If you want to share your story, this is the power of it. You love God and you love people. If you want to change your work environment, you love God, then you love people. You want to change your family environment, you love God and you love people. You want to change what's happening at school, you be the student that walks up and loves God and loves people. This is how we do it. This is how we share our story. The second point is this. So mess to masterpiece. The second point is mess to miracle. The ultimate recycling plan. Who are the greenies in the house that love recycling? I want to tell you a story in the Bible. And it's about a man that was paralyzed and he was on a mat. And it's in John 5, and it says, here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, do you want to get well? And I was thinking about this story and how the disciples must have felt next to Jesus, like, seriously, Jesus, that's kind of a stupid question. Like, do you want to get well? The man's been lying on a mat for 38 years. Of course he wants to get well. And then I was thinking about it, okay, let's pull it into today's context. And how many of us could sit in the room today and go, really? Do you want to get well? Think about it. Do you want to get well? And I know for myself, even when somebody asks me that, even when I feel like Jesus is asking me that, I often have a tendency to pick up the mask and go, I'm fine. Like, I don't need to deal with that. Like, that was so long ago. I don't even need to talk about it. I don't need to look at it. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I think I'm fine. And the truth is that true healing happens when we agree with that statement and say, yes, I do want to get well. And that's when we let God intervene in our lives. At the end of that story, Jesus heals him, and then he says something very, very important. He says, take up your mat and walk. Why is this important? Because I'm thinking, okay, if I just got healed and I could walk, as if I want to take up this mat and drag the stinky old thing along with me after I've just been healed and I can walk. I mean, it's probably so gross. The man's been lying on it for 38 years. Why on earth would Jesus tell him, take up your mat, bring it along with you, and walk? This is why. What if that mat represents this man's story? What if this mat represents everything that God did for him? And every single time someone met him in the town or the village and he had this stinky old mat and people would be like, what's that? He got to say, well, I used to be on this mat and I was stuck on there and it was gross and I couldn't get up. And then I met Jesus and he's incredible and he healed me. And that's what we have. We all have a mat. We all have a story. We all have something God did. And if you don't yet have a mat, if you don't yet feel like God did something in your life, you're in trouble because God wants to do something in your life. He wants to use you. He wants to use your story, and he wants to use your mats. You know, oftentimes I find us trying to use our story and trying to recycle it ourselves, trying to edit it ourselves, trying to sort it out ourselves. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about my mom's family lives in New Brunswick. And when I went there for the first couple times, I was like, what on earth are all of these trash bins? Like, seriously, why do we have 4 different trash bins? There's just trash and recycling. Why are there like 5 different options for me to do? I'm like, Grammy, which is what I call my grandmother, Grammy, what am I supposed to do with this wrapper? Well, Lauren, it goes in this trash bin. Okay, and the next time I have a banana peel, I'm like, Grammy, what do I do with this one? Well, Lauren, it goes in Why do we have so many trash bins? It's just trash or it's recycling, right? And the truth is, I am no good at sorting out the trash, the recycling over in New Brunswick. I have no idea what I'm doing, okay? But I feel like the Lord is saying this to us. When you try to recycle yourself, when you try to recycle your own story and you try to deal with it on your own and you try to strive and you try to fix yourself, it does not work. You end up sorting it out wrong. And later on in life, you go back and it's because it wasn't properly recycled. But thank you, Lord. I know the ultimate recycler. His name is Jesus. He takes every part of my story, every single mess that has been in the trash, and it stinks, and it's ugly, and he pulls it out, and he redeems it. This is who our God is. Guy, you can come up for music. I want to move on to my last point today, and it's called Mess to Message. And the whole title of this is When God Messes with Your Mess. This is what happens when God messes with your mess. And so for my last point, what I want to do is I want to share a little bit of my own story. I want to share a little bit of my own testimony and how God's used so much of my mess to turn it into a message. Because this is the truth. There is a plan and a purpose that is so much greater than what we see here today. And so when I look back on my story, I can see that then. But I wish that I knew in the midst of all of that, that there was a plan and a purpose that was so much greater. I grew up in a Christian home, a Christian family, Christian aunts, Christian uncles, Christian grandparents, cousins, siblings, the whole bit. My family was pretty much born in the Sunday school nursery. I'm not joking, it's true. So I grew up knowing who Jesus was. And when I was about 7 years old, just about to turn 8, I made that decision for myself. I decided that I wanted to follow Jesus, and I remember it so vividly and so clear. My mom sent me a little screenshot of her journal when she wrote it down of when I accepted Jesus, and I remember what song was playing on the radio, and I remember the words that I said, and I just simply said, Jesus, I invite you into my life. Jesus, I accept you into my heart. And really what that shows me is that even a 7-year-old knows what they're doing when they accept Jesus into their life, when they accept Jesus into their heart, because he's not complicated. He's not complicated. And so I accepted Jesus, and I started going into elementary school. Elementary school was great. I was an A+ student, loved every class, except for gym. Wasn't amazing at gym. I was always the one that showed up to the gym teacher and was like, so today I can't play because, and he just knew I could always sit on the sidelines. So I went through elementary school, and it was great. And then fast forward to high school, and the transition, I'm sure many of you know, the transition to high school is never easy. And often it comes with challenges. And some of you parents in here are absolutely incredible for stewarding your children through that. I know that it is difficult. And so I went into high school, and I was actually pretty severely bullied. Girls were so mean to me. The guys were mean to me. I was called horrible and terrible names. I was called ugly. I was said I wasn't worth it. One of my friends actually told me, like, I wish I could have just left you at that park we were at. I don't even want to be your friend. I was really severely bullied. And so even to the point where I went home one day and the kids were making fun of me for something so silly, like every human has hair on their arms. And the girls in the class were making fun of me because kids can be so cruel. So I went home and I bought wax strips and I waxed all of it off. And then I remember buying a machine to actually rip it out so it would never grow back again, because I was like, they're not going to make fun of me for that. And so I became really sad and really depressed, and I actually hid it from my parents that I was so deeply, deeply hurting. And so what I did is I actually started physically hurting myself. I would come home from school, I would lock the bathroom door, I would crouch down, I would sit on the floor, and I began hurting myself. And the reason I did that is because at the time I was receiving so many lies and believing so many lies about myself. I thought that pain's actually better than what I'm experiencing at school right now. That pain is better than what I'm feeling inside right now. I was so broken that I actually even contemplated how I would end my life. I wrote it down, and I always tell some of the, like, if you're writing it down, it's real. I was writing it down of how I planned to do it. And I really believe God intervened because I had a doctor's appointment. And my mom was like, we have to go. It's your annual checkup. And I didn't even know it was coming up. And I was like, I can't go to the doctor. They're going to see it. I was hiding it really well. It's like, they're going to see all of it. They're going to see every time I hurt myself, they're going to see it. And so I had to tell my parents, and they were amazing. They just loved me. They just accepted me. And it was just, I just needed to tell somebody. And so what happened is I told my parents, they loved me, they accepted me. Then on top of that, I kept going to youth group every single Friday. Never underestimate the power of a youth community and youth leaders. They are phenomenal. And I kept going every Friday, and there was one youth service. I just knew I had to come back to Jesus. I knew who he was. He was always there. I knew I just needed to come back. So I re-accepted him into my life again. And so then I kept going on with my life, and Jesus was always there, but he wasn't a super real part of my life. And so I kept moving forward with who I thought I needed to be. And I ended up dating a guy later on in high school, but again, I was with Jesus, so he was kind of just like, the guy's not Christian, you need to end this. So I ended it with him, and all of my friends left me. Like, I'm talking every single friend I had, all my best friends. They just said, that was the wrong decision. You shouldn't have done that. You didn't even have a reason. They didn't get it, right? So I ended that. That spiraled me back down into just something. I was hurting and broken again. I went into Sejip like that, started partying, started drinking, used every outlet I could as a Band-Aid to fix the brokenness that was inside of me. Partying, drinking, went clubbing. And it was just part of me that was so insecure that I didn't know how to fix it. So I kept putting a Band-Aid on it. Then listen to how God uses your mess. That same boy that crumpled up my photo, and I chose to continue the friendship by picking it up out of the trash and not holding it against him that he just broke my heart in kindergarten. That same boy invited me back to Christ when I was about 17 or 18 years old. He's the one that brought me back. Now that's what God does. He uses your mess and he'll turn it into a message. And so what I did was I ended up going to this place called YWAM. It was a discipleship school. I saw the real power of God for the very first time in my life. Talk about that story with the paralyzed man walking again. I literally saw a woman who was paralyzed get up off her mat and walk. For the very first time, the power of God is real. He wants to do miracles today. And I knew it was real because of the way that her husband reacted. You second guess it, but then you look at the husband, and he's just weeping and weeping because he just saw his wife walked for the very first time, and I came home and I was so on fire for God, and I was ready to just move forward, but I didn't have community and I didn't have friends, and so I fell back into depression. And it was like I was again just that 13-year-old little girl, because I never really dealt with the mess. I never really dealt with the mess of that little girl that was sitting on her bathroom floor and hurting herself because the pain was too much. I never dealt with it. So what I did was I fell back into it again. And that's what happens when we don't actually give Jesus all of the pieces. And so again, in my brokenness, I got into the most toxic and emotionally abusive relationship I have ever been in my entire life. And it's not even his, I'm not even going to say it's his fault. We were both so toxic and so emotionally abusive. And I remember crying out to God every single night, Jesus, intervene. This isn't who I want to be. Jesus, intervene. And you know what happened? I walked into Resurgent Church. That's my story. I walked into Resurgent Church and I found a community that loved me, that supported me, that was there for me, that wasn't going to give up on me, that wanted to speak into my mess and say, God will use it. Even the parts you don't want to show anybody, God will use it. That's my story. And for so long, the enemy tried to tell me, your story's not worth it. Don't speak about it. Your story's not worth it. And that's what the enemy tried to do. There is a bad guy, and he does lie to you. And he does tell you that you're not worth it and that your story's not worth it. I want to tell you today, your story's worth it. He paid for it. All of the mess, he paid for it. And you know, I was at the grocery store this week, and I was standing in line with my full cart of groceries. And you know when you're playing that game with yourself and the cashier, and you're like, how much is this actually going to cost, right? And it keeps like beep, beep, and you keep like looking at the little screen, and you're like, okay, it keeps going up, I'm not sure. I felt like the Lord said, today in this room, there will be some people that are sitting in these seats that feel like every time there's been a mess, it's been like beep, across the scanner. And every time it's like, oh, this is going to cost me so much for Jesus to redeem it. It's going to cost me so much for him to be able to take it. Wow, it's really piling on now. I don't think that God can take all of this. I'm not sure. And it's like the more that the beeps go by, the more you're like questioning, I don't think God can use this. Here's the truth. Jesus already paid for your entire cart of mess. There wasn't one bit that he didn't go on the cross for. There isn't one bit that he is surprised about. Nothing scares him. Your mess is worth it. Your mess was worth everything that he did and everything that he paid for. And some of you, you're in a mess today. You're in a mess right now. And you need to know this. God's working. He's working. He's working. He's doing something. He's doing something like we sang in the song. Would you just keep raising a hallelujah? Because he's working on your mess. As long as you keep giving him all the pieces, he's working on your mess.